Final task on the first AAT sample assessment for personal tax. This is on inheritance tax. New style of question, very different from the old Q16, as you will see. Much more ticky boxes, no human marked anymore. So, identify whether the following statements about inheritance tax are true or false. Husbands, wives, and civil partners are assessed independently. Yes, it's done on an individual basis. There are, of course, exemptions when assets are transferred between husbands, wives, and civil partners, but they are assessed independently. The £250 small gift exemption is per transferee, that's the people getting it, per tax year. Yes. And remember, as soon as it goes over that, the whole lot is no longer exempt. It's got to be under to be a small gift exemption. Any unused annual exemption can be carried back one tax year. No, it can be carried forward one tax year. When one party in a marriage or civil partnership dies, the unused part of their nil rate band may be transferred to the surviving spouse, yes, and used against the surviving spouse's lifetime transfers. No, can be used on their death, not while they're still alive. So that one is false. Mr. Q's wife died in 2018. Her estate on death did not use any of her residence nil rate band. Mr. Q died in 2021. The maximum amount of residence nil rate band is 350. Yes, it's 175 each. I can't remember if it tells you that in the reference material. Let's just have a little look. Inheritance tax. We've got tax rates. Oh, there it is. Residence nil rate band 175 applies when a home is passed on death to a direct descendant. Any unused band is transferable to a spouse or civil partner. So you could have checked that there, and that is yes. 2 times 175 is 350. Complete the following statements. Ms. R made 2 lifetime transfers in 21-22. The first one was in May 2021 for £2,500, and the second one was in September 2021 for £4,000. Ms. R had used all her annual exemption from 2021, so there's no £3,000 left from last year. So what would have happened is that gift there would have been wiped out with the current year's annual exemption. We would have had 500 left. So the amount of annual exemption that would be applied here would be the 500 that was left. So there we go. Mr. P received £7,500 from his grandfather on the occasion of his marriage. Right, how much do you get from a grandfather? So again, let's look at the exemptions. Marriage, grandparent, £2,500. So that would leave 5,000 that isn't exempt. The maximum amount of the transfer that may be liable when the grandfather dies will be the £5,000. So that would be a potentially exempt transfer. If the grandfather survives 7 years after the date of the gift, then it would obviously become exempt. Miss T made a lifetime transfer in January 2017, which was treated as potentially exempt. She died in August 2021. So clearly she hasn't survived the 7 years. The taper relief reduction percentage will be, right, so we need to figure out how many years have passed. So I always count backwards. So I would say like August 2020, August 19, August 18, August 17 would have been 4 years back. So August 16 would have been 5 years back. So she died between 4 and 5 years ago. So let's look at the taper relief. So between 4 and 5 years. So over 4, but less than 5, 40%. Mr. D lives in the UK and made 2 gifts to his granddaughter during 21-22. These are the only gifts he made. Complete the table below to show whether these gifts would be CLTs, so that's to do with trusts, an exempt transfer, or potentially exempt. So these are the only gifts he made, 21-22. So he's got a cash gift of 2,000. So it's the first gift in the tax year. So the annual exemption would knock that out. So that is therefore exempt. The jewellery then would have £1,000 knocked off it. So you'd have 14,000 left, which would be, there's no mention of a trust. So it's a potentially exempt transfer. And that would be the end of the assessment. Now, obviously, when you're doing these practice ones, it doesn't mark the human marked ones. Hopefully, we've done everything right. Yep. I don't know if you noticed the time there, 11:40 till 1:22. So I still had 20 minutes left. I've obviously been stopping and starting, doing videos. I did do this paper like cold last night, sort of in preparation for making the video, and I do sort of make a lot of notes. Let me just stop sharing for a second. Yeah, I do sort of make a lot of notes as I sort of go through. So just to give you an idea on timing, so these are my, like, if I was in an exam almost, this is what I would be scribbling. I've got 10 sides of notes that I made while I was actually doing the exam, that show all of my workings. And I did note down that when I got to task 7, I only had 40 minutes left. And I thought, oh gosh, it's not very long, but then it turned out absolutely fine. I had 26 minutes left when I got to task 9. So, I'd made up a bit of time because I did then realise that I was perhaps going a bit too slowly. The question that took me the longest was the income tax computation. It had a lot going on in this one, I thought. So, it would have been quite easy to sort of done it, maybe gone wrong and then had to restart. So for that reason, exam technique, personally, I'd probably do it on a rough piece of paper in full first, and then basically type it up. And because that can be quite time consuming, I might consider doing that at the end. But it really is personal preference. A lot of people say, it's so many minutes per mark, and sort of working in sort of quite a disciplined fashion in that way. I mean, if you think about it, you've got 2 hours, so 120 minutes, you've got 100 marks. So give or take, you've roughly got a minute per mark, haven't you? A little bit over. But, a little bit of reading time and taking a breath time, roughly a minute per mark. If you work on that, then you're not going to go too far wrong and have a little bit of time for checking at the end. All right, hope you found it useful.